memory. So that will execute the query. That's the reason.
When I use the variable node with context, it says non-invocable member. Node with context cannot be used like a method.
But the context is not a method, it's a class.
Yes, this new node with context, we make an object of that.
Yeah.
So I cannot use it in another in this one, my SQL data service. It says it's non-invocable member. It cannot be used like a method.
So what?
It's like we're giving.
Have you anyone of you have the same problem?
It's like giving the dependency injection, right?
You have to do new.
No. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you don't new it's so without this one here, you don't create an instance.
And this is dependency injection.
No, it's not dependency injection. It's actually because we actually create something here. If you should do dependency injection, you should have a constructor where you injected the dependency. Here we don't have dependency injection because this is an implementation.
What if we declare the not with context statics?
Yeah, what you could do was something like this. Put it here. And then have one single, and then you could reuse that. That would be the normal. That would be the normal way of doing that inside the data service, and that would be completely fine. Except, so the reason for not doing that. So this, then you have one context, and then you just use that context, and you don't have to recreate it all the time. That's fine for most databases, but not for MySQL. Because MySQL only allowed you, for whenever you have this, whenever you create a connection to the database, and this will make remember when we did it by hand the first time, we created a connection and then we made a command, so we executed the command. Can you remember that? That's actually what's going on underneath, that's what Entity Framework is doing. And whenever you create a connection to MySQL, you can only do one command on that connection. So you're not allowed to do another command on the same connection. That's a MySQL limitation. So if you work with Oracle or SQL Server or Postgres, you will do this because it makes sense. Because then you just have one context. It's not a big deal because it's not a huge overhead, but that's a consequence of working with MySQL. So a good question. So that's why I just create the context, use it, and then dispose it. Of course, that's an overhead in the long run, but that's part of. That's part of MySQL. MySQL doesn't handle concurrency that well, and at least for the interface from the programming language, it's a problem. So
just an example, like if we use the same method you said for SQL Server, so we make a connection string in a web.config file, then we can use it many times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like this.
Yeah.
But for MySQL we cannot do like this.
No, for MySQL you have to. Because you run into the problem if you make another call to another command. Say you have one in your database service, you have define one method that you want to that could extract some part of the database, and then in another method you want to use that method because you want that part to attach that to when you merge stuff. So you have something that can get categories, something that can get project, and then you want to merge information from that together to some output, whatever it could be. And then MySQL will fail if you make these two different. So it's easier just to do it this way. So it makes the execute the query, transform it into a list. So it's that move it into memory, and then drop the connection. Then you can do another statement. So it's just to solve a MySQL problem. So I'll just do this now. So it should be now on GitHub. So now I have the backend. I have the database, the data layer. So the data layer is up and running. I have so all this for the category. This part is done. So I did all this. I have the domain model with the category. I have the domain, the data service. I have the implementation of the data service, and I have the connection object relational mapping to the database. So this part is what we just did. So now we want to use it upside in our REST API. So going to the categories controller, we want this first one to return categories. So let's do it in 2 steps. So we start saying we want to use the iData service. Oh yeah. So if it's not showing up here, there's 2 reasons. I'm not spelling it correct, or it doesn't know about it. And in this case, it's the last one. It doesn't know about it, because what I'm missing here is to go into the references for the web API and say that it should actually use the database service and the domain model, because I'm using that inside my web application. So I'm using these 2 projects. So that's making a connection of the lower part to the upper part inside there, saying that the upper part is related to the lower part. So it needs to know about it, otherwise I can't use it. So again, it will just add 2 lines to the project JSON here. So that's these 2 lines here. I don't know why I have 60% here, so I think it's easier for you to follow along. So it's just these 2 lines here. So
there was something we have to give reference in the startup also for that to run the domain model. There was something A2 stack, or I forgot the name. Stack 1 something.
No, I don't know.
In the startup.
As
singleton, yeah.
Oh yeah. That's. But we're not doing the dependency injection yet. So that's why I want to do it in 2 steps. So the first one was to just inside. So I instead of working with these, I want to return something from the database. And I don't want to work with the direct type here. I want to use the iAction result instead, because then I can use this OK and not found, and we saw that last time. So I change this one to that, and then I want to create a new instance of my is equal to the MySQL data service. Here it was. So it should be a new in front of that. So I create an instance of the data service. So it should probably be data instead. I think if you're using ReSharper, what you get is if I remove the name and then I do control space, it will give me. Oh, that's not a good idea. So sometimes we give you some good naming, but in this case, it just mixed up. So it's not the data service. So I get a data service, so I want to return data service, and I only have 1 method there, get categories. And of course, I cannot return them directly because I'm using this iAction result. So I need to tell what action is it that what is. So I want to return OK with that one. So OK can be called with or without any data. So you can call it like this and say, oh, just return OK means it just returns the status code 200, meaning sending a message back to the client that it's fine. But you don't need to provide any data. So it could just be an OK adding something or whatever, or deleting something. But in this case, I want to send the OK status together with some data. And the data should be the categories. So if we execute that, I do a control F5. And then it should start up, if I didn't have any mistakes here, it should start up. It start up with these values, but I don't have that anymore because, I didn't show you that. I will show you. So see here, the route is API / and then controller in square brackets. That means that if you use that, you tell the system to say, okay, use the name of the controller. So if I change the name here, then if I just did this one, the value as also possible as just a string, then it will be able to find the values here, because I have a fixed definition of the name, but it's using this one. So square brackets with controller means take the name of the controller and use that as part of the route. So it knows about categories here. So here I don't have that very nice interface because I reinstalled doesn't matter. Or what? This is probably easier. So how to do that? Chrome, I can't remember. How to install the extension?
Just scroll down.
You scroll down and search for the extension.
Ah, thank you. JSON formatter. Yeah, please add to Chrome. Add the extension. Thank you. You are welcome. And then I could just load that again. And nice view instead. So I can get back to the raw one, but I think it's so nice to have this layout because it gives you a big overview right away. So that's fine. Now we are providing. So right now we're actually providing. Now we have a complete connection from the web from the client that uses the web service down to the database because it's a one-to-one mapping. I return directly all the information directly from the database. So we want to deal with that by adding a JSON model. But before we do that, we don't want to create the data service here. We want to inject it. So in order to do that, I will make a constructor. So that's a snippet called ctro, and if I tap after that, it will create a constructor for me. I want into that constructor to have a iData service. Where is that? So I should be able to see that iData. Isn't that the name? So we have to investigate what the problem is. It's probably not public. So either I spelled it wrongly, it didn't know about it, or it is not able to see it. So the interface here should be public. Yeah, you will learn that. Eventually you will learn that. After hours and hours sitting and figuring out what is the problem. So the reason for getting you there should also be, okay, I can access this part here, and that's also part of this one. So I know that. So it must be something else that's the reason. So if I'm here and I do a control space, it will give me some hints on what could be the naming of that one. It's faster than writing it yourself. So data service is very fine. And if I stand there, I can do control dot or alt control, depends. I normally do alt control because I don't know, just in my fingers. And if I do that, say initialize the field from the parameter. Yeah, please do that. So we create. It will do this. It will add this one and then do this. So it's faster. Then I can remove this part here. and then put the underscore here, and then I'm back and up and running. So I'm using this dependency injected object instead. So the only thing we need to do is this what we missed last time, to add this to the services. So we need to tell ASP.NET about that whenever somebody asks for an iData service, what should be the data, the implementation that it should provide. So we have to go to the setup, startup here, go into the configuration, that's down here, here, and then on the service add a singleton, where we give it two arguments in the generic argument here, in the argument list. So that's the first the interface, data service, and then the implementation, that's MySQL data service. So what the framework will do is precisely what we did before. So just create an instance of the data service and then send it into the class when it creates the class, so it knows about that instantiation. And if we want, say we want to implement a MongoDB, and then we just create another project where we have the MongoDB implementation of the same interface, then the only place to switch this is this line of code. Then we will just do the MongoDB's data service. It will provide the same interface, and the rest of the application will not know about it. That's the nice part of making these abstractions. You don't have this dependency about the implementation. This one doesn't know about the implementation. So when you get to the controller here, it only knows about the interface. So it just know that there's an interface, and it can provide the functionality of that interface. And right now, that's just the get categories. How this categories is ending up here is not interesting for this controller. Doesn't need to know, doesn't want to know, because it just make it more complicated. So now, if we just save here and go to this one, and then press this one, it should actually provide the same output. Yes, so here we got it. So the reason for taking some time is that needs to recompile everything and then start up the server again whenever I change the backend here. So that was the first one. Mm-hmm. The next one, I want to get the ID. So you can either do like this. You can say route with an ID, give you the same thing. So there's no difference. The only difference here is that by using, you can do it in HTTP GET. So you don't need to do two things. So you could just do it like this. That will be completely fine. And you don't need to define HTTP GET because that's the default. Mm-hmm. So the controller will assume that that's the default. So if you don't do anything on the methods inside your controller, the framework will think, okay, that's for GET. If you want to do something else like post and put, you have to put this in front. But since you need this one, they provided an interface where you could do both things at the same time. So it would say that now I want the URL with the API category /ID. I need that part, so ID here. If I want it to be optional, I could do like this, but in this case, we only want to get to this point here if they provide an ID. So, and we don't want to return a string, but an action result again. So we just have to figure out how to do that. I assume I get a category. And I get it from my data service. So I can say get category on that ID. Of course, we didn't implement that yet, but that will be the ID. And if we ask for something that is not in the database, this one will just be null. So I just say, okay, if category is equal to null, then return not found. That's part of the action result. So we return a 404 status code, and otherwise say okay with the category. So I only have to implement this one, and then this should work. From this part, it's fine. Get the category from the database. If that's possible, return an OK and the category. If not, say I couldn't find it. So I have to implement that one. I can do that by Alt Enter or go here to say create the method in the data service. Yeah, I want that. So it will go to the data service, even that it's in another project, and say, okay, it doesn't know about categories because I didn't define that here. I just used the var. That means that there's no way that it knows what object this unknown method will return. So that's why it just assumes an object. So I just change that into a category. So if I place the cursor on that one and I go here, it can implement that in the derived class. And if you have more than one class, it will come up with a list so you can choose which one. Eventually you have to implement it in all the derived classes because it's an interface. So every class that uses this interface needs to implement it. So by doing that, it will create a skeleton for that one. So you don't have to do that. Remove that. Use some copy and paste here. Instead of the categories to list, I want to return I want to find the first or default. So first, the default means it goes into the. So just look through the list of. Of course, it will actually do a where statement on the database. So it will translate that into select everything from category where category ID equals this ID. That will be the transformation. Or if it doesn't find anything, it will just return the default, and the default for an object is null. So just have to define what should be inside this where statement. So on the category table, I want to say that the ID should equal the ID we gave it. So now it will return either null if it doesn't find it, but it will translate this into an SQL statement like with a where clause. Did you get that? Sort of. So this should work. So if we save that, go to this one and reload it. It should give us the list as before. So that's here, and then now we can do this one and get the first one. Or if we want to get, I know there's only 8, so if I do like this, it should do this, and it's a 404. Local page can be fine. So if we look at the here, you can see it gets the 404, and that's the not found here. Okay, let's add a new category to the. No, I think let's move to. Before we do that, let's add in the JSON model. We did that last time also. So this is pretty much what we managed to do last time. So I want to add the JSON model. So I need to add that model. So I create a new folder. We can just call it JSON models. Yeah, that's fine. So that's the JSON models of our that we want to return back to the client. Inside here, I create a new class. I call it the category model. Whatever, could be JSON model, but This is enough. So inside here, what I want is a property that is a string, that is the URL, and I want the same as in category. So I just go to category and then copy these two into my JSON here.
And we can take a break.
Yeah, we can take a break.
Because I'm lost here.
Yeah, probably all lost here, but so it's very difficult because if I have to wait, so everybody is then it will take forever to do this. So it's fine to take a break. Just please ask for a break. It's not a big deal, but I just use to take the break now. Yeah. Okay, before we do this. Okay, fine. So I just save now and say put it on. So take 10 minutes break, and then I'll just upload the